Welcome to our YouTube channel, where wisdom meets inspiration. In this channel, we share valuable insights to help you become the best version of yourself. Our content is designed to uplift your spirit and enrich your life. Make sure to subscribe to our channel to stay connected with this incredible journey. Click the subscribe button below.
Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravirmayeti Rudrayatte Dakshinam Mukham Tenamam Pahi Nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. Our topic today is being in and not of the world. A few weeks ago, in last month, I was invited at Harvard at the Divinity School. They had a seminar on a general theme of how monastic traditions are encountering and dealing with problems facing the modern world. And so I would like to share with you a little bit of what I said that day, but a lot more of what I did not say that day. The theme was intriguing because how monastic tradition itself is very ancient. And Hindu monasticism is probably the most ancient in the world. And how does that ancient tradition deal with problems facing the modern world? So it's a very interesting theme. I began by addressing the term monasticism itself. It can be traced back to the Greek word monos, meaning one. In fact, all of these words, monastery, monk, monasticism, all can be traced back to that word being one. And the idea is that as we go through our life and sometimes confront questions about existence, purpose, goal of life, and so on, there are times when we feel, in spite of the connections we have in the world, in spite of the support groups that we have around us, in spite of being surrounded by people, there are times when we feel I'm still alone. This feeling is a little bit different from the feeling of loneliness. That's very different. But feeling of aloneness comes when we seriously think about life. We realize that at some levels, there are things we have to deal with by ourselves. No one in the world can help us, no matter how close they are. In fact, there is an ancient text in Sanskrit which says, and something that I have quoted often on earlier occasions, that the most that anyone in the world can accompany us up to is up to the burial ground or to the cremation place. The journey after death has to be done alone. We come into this world alone and we leave this world alone. And since we have to leave this world alone, it's good to recognize what that aloneness involves and practice a little bit of that aloneness in the mind, since we have to be alone at some point. If you're totally unprepared for that experience of aloneness, then it can be difficult. And so monasticism can be traced back to that that sense of recognizing that at some level, at some stage, maybe at the deeper levels of life, every one of us is alone. And as I've said, and this needs to be stressed again and again, that this being alone is very different, in fact, very different from the experience of loneliness. In fact, I think it was Plotinus who, probably he, or one of the Greek philosophers, who we have see this phrase, the flight of the alone to the alone, the small a to the capital A. And this idea of aloneness often meant in ancient times that those who became intensely aware of this sense of aloneness often no longer remained a part of society. They left, they went to the forest, they went on mountaintops, they went to the caves, they go to the desert. That's why we read about in the Christian tradition about the early desert fathers. And in the Indian subcontinent, they often went to the Himalayas, to the forests, and so on. The idea was, I want to find out what this aloneness implies, what does it involve, and so on. Now, the history of in the Indian subcontinent, a lot of the social structure in India was changed, was forced to change because of this prolonged subjugation, almost 600 years under Mughal rule, and then more than 3 centuries under the British colony. So with all these profound socio-political changes occurring, many reform movements began in that part of the world. Many of these were led by lay people, mainly in order to reorganize Indian society. And then some reform movements were led by the monastics to reorganize the spiritual lives of the people in that part of the world. Now, in the old model, the distinctions were very clear. Those who lived within social structures had duties toward the community. The community expected something from them, and they had to give back because in return they got the support and the benefits from this collective life. And these handful of people who decided we just want to experience our aloneness went to the forest or the desert or mountaintops. They were no longer active part of society, so they were freed from many of the social expectations and duties. And so the distinction was clear. The monastic, as it was understood then, was not a part of society, and the non-monastic, the lay people who lived and worked within social structures, they were in, the monastic was out. Now, in the new model, you could say, I'm calling it new because oftentimes they use the term neo-monasticism. And Swami Vivekananda is often credited with bringing about a very significant change in which how monastics saw their own role and their own duties in modern times. And that was in the monastic order which Vivekananda started, and to which I and the monks of the Vedanta Society belong. They don't go to the forest. I mean, we do go for some time and spend time in the Himalayas, but we don't go and stay there permanently. If we did, then there would be no Vedanta Society. So there is clearly some difference. And so this new way of leading monastic lives right in the hearts of society, sometimes in the heart of a big cities like Boston, how does it change the monastic ideal? How do such monastics living within society deal with social issues, with the problems of the modern world? Because when you're not a part of society, you don't have to deal with it. Those who live here have to deal with it. But now those who formerly went to the forest and now living in societies, they are not immune to the changes that are occurring in society. So how do they deal with it? Or what do they have to contribute to solve the problems facing the modern world? Now, that I've used the word in and out. In the eyes of the let me give you an example, for instance. Now, the Ramakrishna Order, to which many of the Vedanta monks belong, in addition to the teaching of Vedanta that is done in all over the world, the order also runs, especially in Asia and definitely in India, many schools, colleges, orphanages, hospital, clinics to help the poor and the needy, the weaker sections of society. Now, that's clearly a very philanthropic activity, a kind of social service and social workers. So it's not uncommon for people who are not familiar with the spiritual teachings of Vedanta to look at all these works that are done by the Vedanta monks and see, oh, they're the good people. They are doing good social work. So that is, in the eyes of others, this looks like, well, social works. People who are religious are also doing social work. And they seem very much to be a part of the society because they live inside a social structure. Now, how does this same work look from the point of view of the monastics themselves? And the monastics don't see that the work they do as any kind of social work. They don't even really see it as serving society. Ideally, they are expected to see every work that is done as a part of their spiritual practice. In fact, when Karma Yoga Swami Vivekananda said, we must try to see the living God, that if it's possible for the divine to be present in a place of worship, it's all the more possible for the same divine to be present in every living creature. So if you help a hungry person or you help a homeless person, one way of doing it is as a form of charity, as a form of social work. Another way of doing it is, here is this divine being. If God is present everywhere, if God is omnipresent, God is present in the heart of this homeless person in front of me. And in helping that person, I'm really worshipping the divine who is come to me in that form. So from the perspective of the person who is helping, that can become a worship. From the perspective of the onlooker, that's social work. So the view from the outside and the view from the inside can sometimes be very different. This is a part of what I said at Harvard, but there's a lot more that can be said on this subject, and which is what I want to share with you today, because this was not really the main theme of the seminar. I didn't say this, and what I wanted to say was that this idea of new monastic or the neo-monasticism, that a monastic who wants to experience oneness, instead of leaving society, chooses to dwell within society, is not really a new ideal. Although it's credited, Vivekananda is credited with making these changes in a monastic ideal. In a spiritual sense, it's not a new ideal at all. This is really centuries old. In the Gita, chapter 5 of the Gita, verse number 3, this is what Krishna says. Jneyasa nitya sannyasi yo na dveshti na kankshati nirdvandvo hi mahabaho sukham bandhat pramuchyate, which means an eternal monastic is one who neither hates nor expects anything. Free from all conflicts, such a person easily gets out of bondage. Look at the term that is used in the Gita. Nitya sannyasi. Sannyasi is one word that we might translate as a monastic. And nitya means eternal. So Krishna says, there is such a category called an eternal monastic, one who is always a monastic. And that monastic is one who who has succeeded in eliminating all hatred from his or her heart, who has learned how to live without any kind of expectation, who does his or her duties, carries out their responsibilities as best they can, recognizing that what is good for me, God will arrange to bring me what is good for me. All that I need to do is to remain on the right path, do the right thing, do what is good, not hurt anyone, live without expectation, not hate anyone. And if I can live that way, Krishna says, I am an eternal monastic. As spiritual seekers, we are expected to be these kind of eternal monastics. M, the recorder of the Gospel of Ramakrishna, he once said to Ramakrishna that for a lay person to devote his or her time exclusively to spiritual life will be difficult, virtually impossible, because there are so many other worldly duties and responsibilities to attend to. While it's okay for these few monastics who leave everything and go away to think of nothing but God, what would happen to the rest of us, where we have got so many other things to attend to? Just not possible to think of God all the time, just not possible to practice spiritual disciplines all the time. To which Sri Ramakrishna said, and these are his words, there are two kinds of yogis, the revealed and the hidden. The householder may be a hidden yogi. None recognizes them. The householder should renounce mentally, not outwardly. In teachings of Ramakrishna, we see that he stresses that there are two kinds of renunciations. One is the outer renunciation. The external renunciation involves clearly taking formal vows related to monastic life, which automatically brings a separate identity, a different identity. You have a new name, you have a different robes, but just by looking at the robe, it's very clear what one's identity is. And that's why Ramakrishna said it's revealed, it's visible, it's obvious. And the second kind of renunciation, he says, is hidden. That is, it is invisible. And that invisible renunciation is renouncing everything mentally. While externally, this is a public declaration of what one's ideals are, of how one has chosen to live. Internally, we can have the same ideal, but without any external insignia. Now, the important thing is this. This is not either or. That is, if one has only external renunciation and no internal renunciation, that's not monasticism at all. That's not spiritual life at all. So if we see ourselves as genuine spiritual seekers, not just we like to call ourselves spiritual seekers, but if we are serious about our spiritual life, then internally we must try to free ourselves of hatred, free ourselves of expectations. It's only then when hatred and this kind of vain expectation, hankering after things, goes away from the heart, it's only then that all conflicts, both inner conflicts and outer conflicts, will go away. And when that goes away, because that's primarily what is the cause of our bondage. Our pain, suffering in life, all can be traced back to these subtle forms of intense dislikes and likes that we have, and this intense expectations. Sometimes they may not be intense, sometimes they may be very subtle. But as long as, even if there is a little bit of an expectation, we cannot be truly happy. And as we have seen on many occasions, maintaining expectations is a totally useless activity because it doesn't achieve anything. Because things happen. What will happen will happen. What will not happen will not happen. You are expecting it or not expecting it will not change the outcome at all. And therefore, the time and energy we waste in these expectations is better employed in actually doing something towards getting the kind of outcome we want, rather than simply sitting and expecting something will happen in the way we want. So a spiritual seeker, therefore, is both in the world but not of the world. I become of the world, I become an inseparable part of the world through the expectations I harbor in my heart, through the intense dislikes and likes that all these intense feelings towards this perishable things of this world. The more of these I have, the more I'm a part of the world. So I'm in the world and also of the world. And if I'm a part of the world in this intense way, whatever is happening in the world is going to affect me. I cannot remain aloof from it. Now, if I'm affected by what's happening, my ability to change it gets compromised. So if I have to be of real service to the world in which I live, I must find a way to not get caught in it. And that's why oftentimes those in the medical field, for instance, are often advised not to get emotionally entangled with their patients. Because if that kind of a bondage occurs, or even either way, if I intensely dislike or hate my patient, or if I get very emotionally connected with my patient, then as a physician or as a therapist, my ability to help that person gets compromised. So there will always one is advice, and that's not just for medical profession. I imagine the same thing would be for other professions as well, even in legal professions and so on, that a certain amount of detached space needs to be created in order for a real help or service to be possible. And therefore, odd as it may sound, a spiritual seeker is in the world, not fully of the world, which is why a spiritual seeker is in a better position to look at the world with a different eyes. There is this one song that Narendranath, who later became Vivekananda, sang during one of probably his first or second visit to Ramakrishna. It's a Bengali song, and which means this: "O mind," and we sometimes sing it here, "take me to my own abode, that I find myself in this strange foreign land." And the more our spiritual life becomes real to us, it's not unusual to find ourselves a little bit of a misfit in the world. I say a little bit. If it's too much of a misfit, then there's a problem. If I'm too comfortable, too much at ease with everything that is happening around me, then probably I'm still very much off the world. And so a little bit of discomfort about the way things are is necessary. Now, discomfort, well, we all have, if you read the headlines in the papers and every day what's happening, none of us feels very comfortable right now. But I'm not speaking about that kind of discomfort. I'm speaking about the kind of discomfort when we feel, I somehow don't belong here. That this is still a foreign land. We sometimes feel that when you go for long travels and you go to some place where you don't understand the language, you see the culture is different, the people are different, You may still enjoy that vacation, but it's not something you wouldn't like to go and stay there permanently. You're just like, oh yeah, it was fun going there, but you don't feel fully at home. But then when you come to a more familiar surrounding, and then you feel at home. A spiritual seeker will somehow not feel at home anywhere in this world. Because that kind of a discomfort is necessary even in order for me to aspire for something different. Because if I'm fully at ease, fully comfortable here, then I don't need anything else. I'm completely happy here. So there is a little bit of disenchantment, a little bit of discomfort, a little bit of the feeling that now there has to be something better in life than what not only what I have experienced, but what people in history have experienced. That there has to be something deeper, something more profound, something more satisfying, something more fulfilling. So when we look at the problems in the modern world, the way a spiritual seeker will view the problems and try to understand it, try to interpret what they mean, is necessarily therefore going to be different from the way a very worldly person might see. And I use the word worldly simply in the sense one who is not interested in or doesn't care for anything beyond this world. So how would a spiritual seeker look at some of the problems? And it's possible to look at these problems in specific ways about what's happening in your neighborhood or in your country or in certain parts of the world. Or it's possible to to go to the root of the problem and see what is exactly causing the problem. And one major problem today, of course, is the problem of inequality. And it's this inequality that has led to the resulting discrimination on the basis of wealth, gender, race, color, religion. Now, how do we deal with this kind of inequality and the discriminations that it has led to? Now, one way of dealing with it is clearly through protests, through legislation, through recourse to law, and there are a lot of people doing it, and that has definitely some utility. That's needed. But a spiritual seeker might see that there is another way of looking at it, that in addition to or beyond simply protesting or beyond trying to find legislative solutions to these things, the spiritual seeker might say, but what has it really caused this problem? Is it possible to solve it simply by passing some bill in the Congress? Or is the problem more, or are we treating symptoms more than the actual cause of the problem? A spiritual seeker might discover that inequality is kind of inbuilt or is somehow inherent in life. Partly based on our observation, at no point in history have we seen that everything was equal. While equality has always been a great ideal to strive toward, we have not found any time in history that things were always, or even for a short time, completely equal at all levels. And since it never has been so far, it's not unreasonable to be a little bit cynical whether suddenly you pass some law and everything is going to be wonderful overnight. So that might lead us to think that it's possible for us to try to minimize inequality as much as we can, but probably not remove it totally. And therefore we need to keep fighting. We need watchdogs in every generation to see that inequality is kept within manageable limits. And which is why we have, in every part of the world, at every point in history, great social reformers have come Some of them were extraordinary. Some of them were able to make some really good reforms which helped minimize this inequality. Things went on well for some time, and then again it kind of became bad. And then you need another set of reformers to come and help. And that's pretty much the history of most parts of the world. A Vedanta student, whenever he or she looks at the problems that are confronting society, will also try to look at it not also from a subjective standpoint. And that is, inequality, as I said, it could be based on any number of factors, your wealth, gender, color, race, religion, and so on. So a spiritual seeker would look at it subjectively and say, on what basis is my own identity defined? How do I see myself? What is my true identity? Is my true identity intrinsically connected with the amount of wealth I have, or the color of my skin, or the religion that I profess, or the part of the world or the cultural background that I have? Who am I really? So if I know who I am, and if I affirm that true identity, then I can become free from the evil of inequality, both from experiencing it myself and also perpetuating it on others. A lot of times, many of us fail to realize that how we treat others is directly connected with how we see ourselves. So if my own identity is based on any of these criteria, if my identity is inseparably linked with my wealth, then let's say if I have a lot of wealth, then I cannot but see myself as a rich person. And if I see myself as a rich person, I cannot but look at the world around in terms of how much wealth they have. And that's how this rich and poor category gets created. If my cultural identity, of my racial identity, becomes like my primary identity, then I'm going to look at everyone on the basis of their cultural, their racial identities. And that's how then the society gets divided. And so this is one important characteristic that a spiritual seeker realizes, that how I see the world is directly related to how I see myself. And this knowing of one's own true self, and that is why it becomes the central practice in Vedanta, that most evils in the world, in society, can be eliminated if I try to remove that root of evil in my own heart. And the root of evil in my own heart is the distorted perception of myself. If I know exactly who I am truly, beyond all these perishable identities connected with my body and my mind, or my possessions, or the historical accidents about where I was born and in which what was the racial identity of my parents, or which part of the world I grew, in which family I grew up, and what was the cultural and religious background of that family. Many of these were just this was something that we didn't choose. This just happened. And so, how intrinsic is that identity to who I truly am? So this knowing of our true self becomes the key to a permanent solution to problems in the world related to injustice and apathy as well. And now, to acquire that true identity, in Vedanta we would say simply just becoming enlightened. This may not happen overnight. This will take time. But striving to know our true identity is itself a very fulfilling struggle. And to whatever extent we succeed in doing that, we will be able to rise above this problem of inequality in our personal lives. And to the extent we succeed in doing it, we will be able to help eliminate that inequality outside of ourselves as well. Because my way of thinking, my way of dealing with other people, my way of doing my work is all influenced by how I see myself. Another one strong motive power for spiritual seekers is to see the world itself as a manifestation of the divine. So if I'm a spiritual seeker and I see this entire world as a manifesting of that divine spirit, my attitude toward the world will automatically change. Sometimes I feel that we are too often looking for big miracles to occur. And then the chances are many of us are going to get disappointed. Well, nothing seems to be changing in the same old world. But I think instead of looking at these big, huge, dramatic miracles, it's so much more practical to look at these daily, small little miracles that are occurring all around us. By looking, but waiting for something big, we are missing out on some of these tiny miracles that are always happening around us. If you meet a friend or you see someone who is passing through a difficult time in life, and we know when there is this real struggle, real difficulty going on, it doesn't always remain inside. We cannot just come. It'll express itself. Oftentimes through just our physical appearance. It'll be obvious if it's a really sometimes we are successful in keeping our inner pain inside, but a lot of times no. At that time, if I, with true empathy, with that cheerfulness and love in my own heart, with my just presence and the right way of speaking and sharing, if I can even bring a little bit of hope, a little bit of sunshine in the life of a person, of a friend who is grieving, and you see the face of a smile on the face of someone who was finding it difficult to smile, that's a miracle. But we may miss it if all that we are looking is something very big that is occurring around us. And I think a spiritual seeker becomes more sensitive to these tiny bits of miracles that is possible to achieve. We may not be able to change the entire world overnight, but it's possible for every one of us to reform our own selves, to be able to help our own selves. And then, at least in our immediate circle, within our family, within our neighbors or a neighborhood, or your colleagues at your workplace, to be able to bring some amount of peace, friendship, love, and understanding. And I think that does contribute towards eliminating many of the social evils that we become frustrated about. Another one strong motive for a spiritual seeker would be to not simply think about just a short-term view of life, but also have a little bit of a farsight and foresight. And that would be to not simply think that I want to be happy now, but a spiritual seeker would say, what kind of a world I'm leaving behind for my children and my grandchildren? And so the issues, for instance, the problem about the environment, the air pollution, water, and so on. So it's not simply that, the world is not going to end within the next few years as long as I live, and I don't care what will happen afterwards. That seems a very selfish way, and that's not how a spiritual seeker would think. So even being this concern, if not for the entire world, at least for one's own children and grandchildren, for one's own family, will make us address some of these social issues of our time in a more gentle and a careful way. Another one problem that does need addressing is, of course, the problem of religion being used as... religion is such a strong motive power that oftentimes religious language and symbols and religious feelings and emotions are misused by leaders in other fields, such as in politics and so on, even in the financial world. Religious the religious sentiments are misused to mobilize people for all these different agendas. And therefore, the need for interfaith dialogue becomes very important. So that's another one major issue that we are faced with. And a spiritual seeker will have to find a way of how to understand the role of religion and spirituality in their own lives, and to see, first recognize how these things can get misappropriated or misused in society, and try as much as they can to correct or to restore the balance. So I would just like to conclude, therefore, by pointing out that as spiritual seekers, we are all in the world, but we don't have to become worldly. Just because we are in the world doesn't mean that we have to be worldly. The example that is often given in Vedanta books is of a boat. A boat, that the right place for a boat to be is in water. Well, a boat which is on land, really just occupying space, is totally useless. But a boat, the right place is in water. But the boat should be in water, but the water shouldn't get, well, not at least too much water in the boat. That was the problem with Titanic. So none of us is out of the world. I mean, I spoke earlier about monastics going to the mountain tops and desert and all of that. But it's not as if mountain tops and deserts and forests are not part of the world. They are also a part of the world. So none of us really is out of the world in that sense. We are all in the world. Just because we are in the world does not mean that we have to embrace the world with all of its limitations, with all of its dark side. Can we be in the water and not be affected by it? The example also sometimes given in Vedanta text is of a lotus flower. A lotus grows in the water. That's where the right place for it to be. In fact, there's a lot of mud, and where the lotus takes its roots, it's not pretty at all. But then it doesn't remain stuck to that pretty messy ground on which its roots take, and then it rises above. And then when it comes on top of water, you see this beautiful lotus flower, and the leaves which are floating on water, just on the water level, water doesn't stick to them. So even if you put water, it just kind of forms little globules. So it is in water, but the water doesn't stick to it. And that's the ideal for a spiritual seeker, because we really don't have any choice. We can't get out of this world. We are in this world. But can we be like that lotus leaf? Be in the world, but not let the world pollute us. And sometimes, when there is this air pollution, people use masks, because the idea is, I can't clear all the air. The least I can do is first protect myself. And so a mask will help. There is such a thing as a kind of a spiritual mask. So I can be in the world, and yet... Now, I don't want to give the idea that there's just bad things in the world. Clearly not. The world is a mixture of good and bad. So can we be in the world, learn, grow, and be nourished by everything wonderful that this world has to offer, and keep out everything that is negative, everything that is destructive? That ability to separate out what is helpful from what is not helpful, from what is constructive from what is destructive, that is the primary requirement for a spiritual seeker. Because only if I'm able to look clearly and distinguish what is good and what is not good for me, will I then have that ability to choose what is good and reject what is not good. But I won't be able to do that if I cannot distinguish between the two. So that primary quality, often called viveka, discernment, that is the first major requirement to succeed in our spiritual life. So these are some of the ideas that come to my mind as we begin to think about how it is possible for us to be in the world and not of it. And it's also a chance for us to look in our own heart, to see, look at our own life's experiences and see in what way the world has changed us. What kind of good, positive changes that have occurred, and what not so good changes that have occurred in me. What are the things I must be grateful for the world that it has given me, and what are the things I must be careful about so that it doesn't hurt me. So this kind of a thinking in a spiritual seeker's heart is very helpful. And it is only in that way we will be able to protect not only ourselves, but we will be able to protect and nourish even those who are around us. And eventually we will realize that we're neither in nor out. This in and out categories are very fragile. We are neither this nor that. It's not about being worldly or not worldly. We just have to be our true selves. So at some point we'll leave behind this distinction between being in and out and just remain our true self. And that remaining as our true self, that is what in Vedanta is called a real freedom. Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu.
Become Swami Vivekananda's messenger. Share the video with 3 of your friends.